Welcome back to That's When I Knew the podcast, where real people have real conversations about the journey towards building a meaningful career. I'm your host, Robert Christain.
I'm Zakiya Kunadu.
On this week's episode, we're joined by Christian Trigg. Christian has spent the last 5 years working as a sales professional in the sports entertainment vertical and is currently working as a senior sales consultant for the San Francisco 49ers. Christian's story is one of the most inspiring stories that I've ever heard, and he is really the definition of not letting your circumstances dictate your future. I hope y'all enjoyed today's show. Thanks again, Christian, for joining the podcast today.
No problem. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know if you all made your introductions, but maybe we want to just start off with Christian, introducing yourself, where you work, what you do.
Yeah. So, my name is Christian Trigg. I graduated from Tuskegee University. Shout out to my HBCU alum. Graduated with the sales and marketing degree, and I've been working in sports I have about 6 years of experience at this point. Worked for the Phoenix Suns to start off, and then an opportunity for promotion came at the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm currently a senior sales consultant there, and originally from Hayward, California.
That makes this show extra special then. I love that you're from the Bay Area, and just to give you a quick rundown on the show, I know Zakiya has probably told you a bit here and you've seen the flyer and whatnot, but our goal is to just give professionals like yourself an opportunity to share your story and, inspire those that might be listening. And so with that said, we typically like to start off the show by learning a bit more about your background. Starting at the early days,
Take it way back.
Way back. So our first question for you is, being that you grew up in Hayward in the East Bay area, can you just tell us a little bit what that was like, and then also how your upbringing has kind of influenced or affected your approach to building a career?
That is a great question, and it's something that I love to talk about. When people ask, I think I should talk more about my story a little bit more. But I would definitely say growing up here in the Bay Area, it had its trials and tribulations that came along with it. So I was raised in a single parent household. My mother took care of me, and pretty much, I was kind of that surprise child, so to speak. Came kind of late in the game. I have a brother and a sister. They're 10 years and 13 years older than me, respectively. And, my mother, she dealt with some, I would say, when she was raising me or pregnant with me, she got closer to God. And at the time, she was dealing with some things. And when I was born, and the first few years or so, she was kind of battling with a drug addiction, so to speak. And that kind of impacted her relationship with my brother and sister. And when I came of age and I kind of gained more sense to know everything, some things happened where, she kind of got involved with the wrong people. And it basically led to, so I'll back up some. So pretty much when I was about 5-6 years old, we were living in Hayward, and she was getting closer to God, but she was still kind of involved with other, probably the wrong crowd, so to speak. And that eventually led, we had to basically move away from our apartment because things kind of started to slip. And so we moved to West Oakland, At the time, it was called the Lower Bottoms, and it's a little gentrified now. You won't see the same faces around there, but we lived in the Lower Bottoms for a while, and I just recall like a lot of the friends that she would call. I just knew even at that age, like those were not friends. And I remember we went out to church one day and came back, and we noticed that our front door was open, and I go up and I'm like, okay, what is going on? We literally walk in our house, everything's gone. Everything. Like, we were left with nothing. Not saying, it may have been the people who actually came in our house, but there's a good shot that, maybe it was. And that was kind of a turning point in my life. My mother, and that was pretty much a wake up call for her. She did whatever she needed to do to make sure that she was able to take care of her son. So she had to sacrifice. So pretty much I went and I lived with my uncle Thomas and my aunt Beretha in San Jose for about a year or so. And my mom went ahead and did a program, and that was a place where she could recover, kind of learn some different strategies or whatnot to help take care of me in a better way. And so second, third grade, I was living in San Jose. After that, and Zakiya knows my cousin Sade. That's actually the year I was away from my mom is the year I was living with Sade. And so we, after that year or so, my mom got back. She was fine. She did whatever she could to get her son back. And so for a while, we were living in homeless shelters for a few years or so. And that really taught me resilience. My mother never gave up. That was one thing that I respected of her. She was always doing whatever it took to make sure that her son was okay. And even if that meant living in homeless shelters for a little while, she did whatever she could to get us back on our feet. So fast forward a few years later, we were back to church. She got heavily involved in church and got saved. And we connected with our pastor, and there was an opportunity for us to get into low-income housing. And the low-income housing was in South Hayward, where I was raised anyway. So we got into that low-income housing area. Was there for ever since, pretty much. We were there ever since. Everything started going smoothly. Along the way, we did have to stay with a few church members or whatnot, and I would say that really taught me independence in a sense, and it helped me grow up a little bit faster than I needed to. And to this day, I really feel like my independence was influenced by the trials and tribulations I went through as a child. Middle school came, and unfortunately, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it was probably one of the most challenging times for me emotionally, dealing with that at the age of 13. And so during that battle, she just wanted to make sure that I was taken care of, and that whoever was going to take over guardianship, that they were going to do a great job. That turned out to be my uncle Junior and my aunt Vanessa. Unfortunately, pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest forms of cancer, and my mother passed away in March of 2007, right before I started high school. So with Uncle Junior and Aunt Vanessa, they stepped in and they did an amazing job. So my uncle junior is about a year older than my mom, and my aunt Vanessa pretty much got married into the family, and she treated me like I was her son. And to this day, they still I am their son, and they call me that all the time. So they still live in Hayward. They still live in Hayward or whatnot. I go and see them quite often, and they pretty much got me to help me get to college. So I was thankfully encouraged by my aunt Vanessa to attend the Black College Expo. The Black College Expo, I came across this group of young Black men and women who were in suits. They looked very professional. Turns out it was a nonprofit called the Young Scholars Program. The Young Scholars Program was ran by Miss Jacqueline Rushing. Rest in peace to her. She passed away this February, and that really changed the direction of my path. Before that program, I wasn't sure how I was going to get to college, let alone afford it.
Right.
Through the program, I was able to attend the HBCU tour my junior and senior year, and it really opened my eyes to HBCUs. I had no clue about what they were until my sophomore year of high school. After visiting HBCUs for 2 years, I was intrigued by Tuskegee University the most, and thankfully, I worked hard enough in high school and took my SATs or whatnot, and I was able to receive an academic scholarship to attend Tuskegee University.
Nice.
Thank you. So there I majored in sales and marketing. I became heavily involved. I would say throughout high school, I was still impacted by the emotions of the loss of my mom. So I was more introverted throughout high school, but the Young Scholars Program definitely helped me get out of my shell. And so when I went to college, I feel like I was prepared to meet new people, get involved. And so I was able to assume quite a few leadership roles while at Tuskegee. And I even pledged, I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which was totally out of the norm for me. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into by doing that, but it was an amazing journey, and I'm just thankful to God that He brought me through. And so the story about getting into sports, I don't know if you guys want me to start talking about that yet, but
we can, that really appreciate.
There's a lot of, yeah,
definitely.
So
we just, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Well, the question right off the top of my mind is, okay, you're going to college. Well, first off, were you seeing a lot of people when you were growing up going to college? Like you mentioned that you had older siblings. Were they college graduates? Were you a first generation college student, or was this kind of expected from you from the jump?
First generation, but what I will say is, and this is the importance of parenting, constantly encouraging your kids and constantly telling them that they're going to be great, that they're going to do amazing things. No matter what my mom was going through, she always instilled in me and always told me that I was going to be somebody. She always told me that I was smart. She always told me that I was going to college. She wanted me to go more of the church route, which I didn't go, but her positivity and her encouraging words, just hearing it every day, hearing that you're smart, hearing that you're going to do great things, it almost brings a sense of obligation over you as you get older and the more mature you get. So I would say definitely that. And not only that, but my brother and my sister always encouraged me, and they always spoke positivity into my life. They didn't go the college route, but to this day, they're constantly instilling in me, continue to work hard. You're going to do great things. So speaking positivity and manifesting in my life has really gotten me to where I am. And I think my mom and my siblings for that.
So I don't know if we covered. So you mentioned that you also, where you were with like your aunts and your uncles. Like, what kind of jobs were they in? Like, what were you kind of exposed to, as far as like career wise? What when you were living with those folks?
So my Uncle Thomas was in nursing.
Hmm.
He is definitely somebody who he was an RN at San Francisco General, one of the busiest hospitals in the Bay Area. I wouldn't say I was impacted from a career standpoint by that. I would say more so like my career direction was more so impacted by school itself.
Hmm.
James Logan thankfully had several elective courses in several different fields. And I came across the Marketing and Management Academy at James Logan.
Hmm.
How the marketing and management, and I'm thinking about Mr. Ridgeberg, the teacher. He wasn't my favorite,
Shout out to
but
Mr.
I will say one of his lessons was it's one that stuck with me, and it still sticks with me today. And that is, and it was plastered across his wall in big bold letters. It's not what you know, it's who you know, who knows you, and how you treat them.
Hmm.
And if he taught me anything coming into that classroom and seeing that every day,
Yeah.
it made a world of difference in my life. And I can tell you guys a story about how I got into sports, but that lesson really applied to how I kind of transitioned and got into the industry that I've always wanted to be in. And the Marketing Management Academy, we were able to participate in business case competitions. It got me interested in business. I will say that for sure.
It sounds a lot like my high school experience. I went to San Leandro High School, and we had a program called DECA. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
So it sounds like the exact same thing, and that's awesome to hear. But one thing I will say though is these classes, you're in sales, and it sounds like you were in, when you were introduced to business, it was from a marketing,
Right.
situation. So how did you going into college, did you know that you just wanted to be in business no matter what, or were you like focused on a particular field like marketing, or did you always know you were going to be in sales?
I focused on sports per se. I know I'm not LeBron James. I'm not Kobe. I love tennis, but I'm not Serena or Venus Williams. So I knew that route probably was not the best for me. But I knew how to think, and I know that I enjoy business. And so that's what I aimed for at an early age. Starting in high school, I said, you know what? Athletic route is probably not going to be the best case, but there are other routes into the industry. And so that's what pretty much led me to working my way into sports.
And I think that's awesome that you knew you wanted to be in the world of sports, and that you had the knowledge and the know-how to know that sports is more than just the athlete. There's the business that makes sports, continue to grow. So my question for you was like, okay, you know that you want to be in sports as an adult, but how did you know you wanted to be in sales? Or was it kind of, sales is what was your introduction into the sports business world?
Sales was definitely a segue into the sports industry.
Okay.
Now, a part of that Marketing and Management Academy, particularly the competitions that we would attend, you're presenting a business. So sales was a part of it. And what I love about sales is not only the relationship building, it provides skills in negotiation. It enhances your communication skills overall. It allows you to persuade people to do things, but not in a deceitful way.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of things that I loved about sales and a lot of skills that I learned over my time at Tuskegee. I even majored in sales and marketing while at Tuskegee. And a lot of the lessons that I learned in my classes, I was able to apply when I transitioned into my career.
Interesting. So I know that we've had conversations, Christian, about obviously you've been in sales and kind of going into like the partnerships and kind of maybe trying some different avenues. If you could just kind of explain, a little bit about where you would ultimately want to be, or kind of how you plan to transition, or if sales is like, this is what I just want to do. But I'd love to kind of know a little bit more about that, since you've already been clear of like business, sports, sales and things like that.
Yeah. So now that I would say I was introduced to the partnership side at the Suns when I was working there. And like I said, sales was a segue, but actually working in the industry opened my eyes to other avenues within sports.
Right.
And so I became intrigued by corporate partnerships, and it's definitely something that's on the radar. I would say the transition, I definitely want to enhance my skills from a marketing standpoint, which is why I'm currently pursuing my MBA. And right now I'm on the first steps, but I'm planning on applying this fall. And hopefully, once I gain that full knowledge of the marketing side, an in-depth knowledge of the marketing side, I'm able to network a little bit more.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe working for a brand is in the future, or perhaps another team. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And not only that, I want to work with community a lot more. I do it quite a bit now.
Yeah.
From a mentoring standpoint or whatnot. There's a lot that I want to accomplish. I mean, I want to not only do that, I'm still deciding on what my entrepreneurial venture is going to be. But from maybe it could be a sponsorship consulting firm. There's so many possibilities living in America in a capitalistic society, and the sky's the limit. But for now, of course, the ultimate goal is to not have to work for someone.
True.
But I definitely want to gain industry knowledge and be in it first to build credibility once, I do make that transition to an entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah, definitely. I guess what I'm curious is, as you're still trying to think about your journey and where you're hoping to go, obviously there's like a lot of things that you want to get into, do your MBA and get into partnerships and get, exposure. I think that also ties into a lot of people who may be in your same position, or who are just graduating from high school, from college, and just trying to figure it out, right? How would you say is the best approach for people to go about figuring out when they have like these grand plans, right? And how do they figure out what's their first steps, or how can they, get involved? Because it seems like you've also had a lot of opportunities to be a part of different groups, and, you've had those types of mentors. So what would you say for other people who are kind of on your path that they could, kind of model after?
I would definitely say that networking is so important, and just knowing how to network. And not only networking with the right people, but following up and following through with them is going to be key. And that has been partially my strength, but also partially my weakness, because sometimes we get distracted by our personal lives and then we forget about our future goals or whatnot. And maybe you lose contact with those people. I'll say I was in contact I was introduced to a VP at the Brooklyn Nets, and we were in contact, and I just wish I would have fostered the relationship a little bit more than I did. And from a entry level standpoint, if you're graduating from college and you're getting into the industry or whatnot, even if you're not in the industry, what I always say is there's so many opportunities today to network. You have Instagram, you have LinkedIn, you have Facebook. I would say LinkedIn has definitely provided many opportunities for me just off reaching out to people. And you may not get a response from everyone, but it takes that one response that can really change things for you. I remember at one point I was reaching out to several people at once and got a chance to talk with several VPs who were in partnerships or whatnot, because there are people out there who are willing to help that next generation of young people, coming into the workforce and wanting to get into their industry because they're passionate about it.
Yeah.
So it's really about finding those passionate people who are selfless when you're walking into the industry. So anyone listening to this, I just encourage you to network, follow up, but also follow through. The following through piece is really key because you can have a conversation with someone, and I see this mistake quite a bit. You can have a conversation with someone who's in the industry that you want to work in, but after that conversation, why don't you follow up with them and show them how you've applied those principles that they provided you on that call. So I think I try to do it. I think I try doing a good job of that, keeping the people that I make key relationship with updated on what I'm doing in my career. And it really shows them that they're listening. They want to see people who are listening to them. So I think that's very key.
I think those are all gems.
Yeah.
Those are all gems. And a lot of that I wish I knew, 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago. Did you have mentors like, coming through college? I know you mentioned that you were in a fraternity. I know a big part of that is like mentorship and community. What are your thoughts on mentorship and what's been your experience with that?
Mentorship is one of the most important things and one of my passions for sure. Any chance I have an opportunity, and just my personal story, the Young Scholars Program, a big part of it was mentorship. And going back to high school, Mr. Mack, he was he was my mentor in the Young Scholars Program. And so just keeping in contact with him, hearing encouraging words, like I mentioned before, just speaking manifestation over someone, you never know how much that will impact you. And mentorship, I would say definitely find someone that's willing to sacrifice the time for you. Because there's so many people in this world, they'll take time to talk with you one time, but you try to get them on again, you try to have another conversation, and then it's like they're too busy. Find somebody who isn't too busy. Maybe you want somebody who's at a higher level position, who probably has a busier schedule, but also find someone who is maybe entry level in the industry that you want to go to. Don't discredit them as well. I definitely, like in my first couple of years, that was key. I had a few students at Tuskegee who had reached out to me, and I was learning. I wasn't an expert in the industry yet. I didn't know who to contact, what to do. I was still learning, but the fact that there were other students who looked like me who were inspired or interested in going into my industry, it encouraged me to do it as well. So I would say have a variety of mentors. Don't just aim for the top. Have somebody at the top, have somebody who's probably like mid-level, and somebody who's entry-level in the area that you want to go to, because they can provide key advice that you need at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's at a VP level already probably doesn't remember every little lesson that they learned when they were just starting. or they probably didn't take that same route. So I would encourage them to do that.
Yeah. Well, also, I think like part of the show is we're hoping to obviously inspire other people, motivate them and find ways to, maybe plug a mentor or those types of things. And so
Right.
obviously you say you're really passionate about mentorship, and I'm hoping that somebody who's listening to this, they could reach out to you via LinkedIn or however you'd like to, be able to communicate with them. But I think that would be a great opportunity, if you're willing to do so.
Whatever I need to do to make sure that the culture is secure, I'm going to do it. I will do it. I will take time out of my day to talk with a student who is motivated to get into my industry before somebody who is not really passionate, not really interested. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it really, when people reach out to me, I want to know that they've done their research. Basically, I think it's also important to keep in mind that a lot of people worked hard to get into the industries that they're in, so they expect you to do the same. It's not going to be a simple, hey, can you get me a job here? It's not like that. Like, build a relationship, learn about that industry, show me that you already done your research, I think that's what helped me a lot. Just trying to learn as much as possible before reaching out. And then ultimately that helped. I didn't always receive yeses. I received 1,000 no's before I finally received a yes. And thankfully, I'm on the right path right now. And sometimes we could be our own biggest critic, but at the end of the day, it's really about staying positive and pushing through those tough times.
100% agree. Rob, did you have anything?
I mean, and, you make a really good point. It's not about just going out there and finding mentors. You also have to be prepared to put in that work.
Yeah.
Because,
right.
I think that's a gem right there for sure.
Yeah, and and like I said, it's just when people are kind of deciding on what they truly want to do, they need to really buckle down and find what is it that doesn't feel like work, and what doesn't. And when you find that, when it is that particular thing, that's when you know, like the podcast, that's when you know that's what you want to do.
Oh, hey, well, thank you for using the name of the podcast. Thank you for that. Appreciate you.
Because that's when I knew.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. So I think oftentimes, especially in sales, because it can be a tiring job sometimes. Often we feel that it's work, but really it's maybe it's the company we're working at, maybe it's our manager, maybe it's the culture at that place. So do you have any like insight on that and how to decipher between the two? And just leave it open.
With that, it's really, I think one thing that I did a great job of is speaking up. And when I don't agree with something, I'm not afraid to reach out to who I'm being managed by or who the leaders are in the organization. And it may not create instant change, but at least you're letting it be known, like, this is how you feel. And if they feel like you're adding value to that organization, they may not make the change immediately, but they'll at least take heed and listen to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not going to look down on you because they know that you're a valuable employee to that, and you're a valuable asset to that organization. So if I believe in my heart that I'm a valuable asset to the organization, therefore I'm not going to be afraid to speak up when I feel like I don't agree with something. I think that plays a role. And then also, I would say that's probably the biggest piece. But then also with sales, we hear a lot of no's. And when you hear those no's, just staying encouraged. What has kept me encouraged is thinking about the future a bit more. Um, in sales, I've seen a lot of people come and go,
Right.
as you can imagine, come and go for positive reasons and negative reasons.
Mm.
And just seeing people's career growth over the years or whatnot, that has kept me encouraged. When I'm getting that no, it's always important to keep in mind what you're working toward. I think that's very extremely important in sales. And if you feel like it isn't a good fit for you, go with your instinct. You know, I would say give it a chance for sure. Some people they start off, they're in it for a month or two and they're already ready to quit. It's like you need to give it a shot, like give it a chance. And I understand where you're coming from a sales standpoint. It's really about selling something that you believe in for one, and then also keeping in mind what you're working toward in the future.
Yeah, I like all of that. I mean, each no you get is you're one step closer to a yes, right? So
Exactly.
having that perspective, and also like you said, keeping the end game in mind. That's important. But while we're kind of on this topic of career and powering through, has there been a situation, or has there been a time where you had a setback, or something hasn't gone right in your career so far, but in retrospect, there was a lesson, or things ended up working out for you?
I would, yes, definitely. One story I would definitely like to talk about, Zakiya, wink, wink, but we'll say that for there is one story that I would like to talk about, but
we can always edit it out.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
But it's your prerogative. I mean, no worries.
I'll talk about when I was transitioning from the Suns to the Niners. So when you get into sports sales, you're in what's called inside sales. Inside sales is pretty much entry level. You're not really considered a full-time employee quite yet, but you work past full-time hours. And so you're basically earning your spot as an account executive, which is the next level where you are a full-time employee. And I was at the Suns, and it came a time where I was on. So inside sales are basically programs, and they last about 11, 12 months, and you're usually supposed to be promoted to account executive, or before then, a lot of people find that it's probably not a good fit for their career. And so I was on month 10, 11. I had been offered a role as a group account executive at the Sun, but I wasn't really fond of selling groups, even though I had an opportunity to work with a lot of organizations. And so like I mentioned before, I felt like I was a valuable asset, so I was willing to speak my mind. I basically told them I'm not interested in that. And so I knew that I was taking a risk, but I also made sure I was doing what I could outside of work to take that next step. And so they saw me as a valuable enough asset to help me with external organizations. And so came across several, one in particular. I applied, and going back to LinkedIn, I applied to a position at Cal and reached out to the director, had a few interviews with them, made it to the last round, and basically they said, well, I was going for 2 steps above where I was. I was going for premium account executive, which was basically selling your more high-end clients, and made it to the last round with that. And I was like, oh, wow. So let's see if I can do this. At the end, they said they wanted a little bit more experience, but they want me to apply for the account executive position. So I said, okay. Received several no's from other organizations as well. And I was at a point where I was ready to take that next step. I've seen a couple people had been promoted at the Suns. And it was kind of a downtime for me. It was a time where I was like, okay, well, I chose this industry. Uh, what am I about to do? Like, what if I don't get these jobs outside of the Suns? Like, what am I going to do? My inside sales role is about to end. And so I knew someone, and this goes back to the principle from Mr. Richburg in high school. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
I knew someone who was at the San Francisco 49ers. I applied. He was not in a sales role or a business role. He was in an audio and visual role. Watched me grow up in church. Like our family, my mom was connected with, his family or whatnot. And I told him, I reached out, said, hey, I applied for this role. I hope you're doing good. Wants to know if there's any way that you can pass my resume along. I said it in a more professional way, but he went ahead and he said, yeah, I'm connected with the manager there or whatnot. Let's see if I can get your resume in front of them. So he did. Got reached out to by the manager at the time, and he had several interviews. And at the same time that I was receiving the offer to interview for the account executive role at Cal, I received my full offer from the 49ers. And that was such a blessing for me. And I had to tell Cal, like, hey, I got a full-time offer from the Niners. Like, you guys had an opportunity, but
missed out.
You missed out, nah. But I'm still cool with that team to this day. I didn't burn any bridges doing that, and I think the important thing is I kept transparency with the Phoenix Suns. I think that was huge for me to not burn that bridge, and I'm still connected with my inside sales manager to this day. And I think that's really important, especially if you want to break into the sports and entertainment industry. Do not burn bridges. The industry is, it's so small.
Yeah.
Everyone knows everyone across leagues, across business disciplines. Do not try your best not to burn any bridges because everyone knows everybody in some way. Yeah, I would say that was probably the biggest setback so far. And I'm looking forward to the many other setbacks to come, but I'll be ready.
I mean, to me, I think, again, there's another gem there. I wouldn't even really consider that too crazy of a setback.
Yeah.
It could have been a setback. I think it was a risk that you took. You took a risk and you bet on yourself. And I think, we need to do more of that.
I agree. I think transparency is definitely key. I think sometimes when we are in a position or we're in that mindset of, I don't want to be at this company anymore. I don't think I want to do this. We find ways to like make excuses or not be upfront about how we're feeling or what opportunities are out there, whether it's maybe they need to give you like a stretch opportunity at your current position. Maybe you're just not as motivated, or maybe it's just completely, I need to get out of this industry. But I think we need to be, everyone, regardless of where you are in your careers, continue to be transparent about how you're feeling, how things are going, because you might be blocking yourself from an opportunity. And like Rob said, I agree. I think you handled it really well. So yeah, it worked out. But yeah, transparency is key.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, let's see. Should we move to rapid fire?
All right, let's get into rapid fire. Zakiya, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so basically we're just gonna ask you a round of questions, and just whatever's the first thing that comes to your mind, just go ahead and give us your answer. It's usually just pretty quick, given the reason rapid fire. So I will start off. What song, lyric, or quote motivates you?
Oh.
First thing, get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Don't give up. I don't know.
Or
like
a song, or a song.
I told you guys the quote that always sticks with me.
Or a song lyric.
I have one. Excuses are tools of incompetence that build monuments of nothingness and bridges that lead to nowhere. Those who use them seldom, if ever, accomplish anything. That was my favorite quote.
Oh man, that's a long quote too. That's a good one. Okay, next question. Which has been more valuable for you, your education or your professional experience?
Education.
All right. Zoom or Google Hangouts?
Zoom with it.
Given the times, do you prefer in-office work or remote work?
I like remote.
Okay. Okay. Would you rather work 5 8-hour days or 4 10-hour days?
4 10-hour days for sure.
Okay. If you were the CEO of your company, what's one policy or rule you would implement day one?
I would implement.
Another tough one.
Policy.
Or get rid of. Maybe something that you would get rid of.
I would say I've never been a big fan of business professional attire. So I would say that I feel like people buy based on the person more so than what they have on. That's just the way I think, but that's probably what I would do. Not telling you guys not to dress up professional for an interview, those who are listening.
Well, we're in tech, though. We're in tech, so it's t-shirt and jeans for us Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
Right.
And sweats while we're in lockdown.
Right.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right. Well, that is the end of Rapid Fire. Yeah, thank you so much for hopping on and dropping literally all of those gems. There's going to be so many clips that will likely come from this. Appreciate you.
This was a pleasure. It was my first experience on a podcast, so
okay.
I hope it went well.
It went extremely
well. This is actually my first, outside of just a professional formal interview, this is my first interview in general.
Yeah.
So,
well, we hope you enjoyed it, and
I did. I really did.
I know I enjoyed my time. This has been a great time. It's been great to hear your story. You inspired me, and
I appreciate it.
Glad to be connected with you, and for all our listeners out there, all the watchers on YouTube, thank you all for joining us on today's show. Until next time.
All right.